From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President.
Welcome to this week's edition of This Week with the President, a weekly news program which takes an in-depth look at the policies, programs and work of the President of Guyana in his quest to realize the good life for all Guyanese. I'm your host, Gomati Gangadin. Thank you for joining us. In the highlights this week, President focused on comprehensive strategies that attacks root causes of crime. A new model of trade unionism needed to prepare the workers for the future, President Granger says. President Granger announces support for micro-enterprises ventures at observance of National Day of Villages. These stories and more on This Week with the President. Stay with us. The safety and security of all Guyanese has always been one of the top priorities of the David Granger-led administration. While the administration must tackle entrenched criminal activity after years of neglect in the security sector, some gains have been made in the apprehension of dangerous criminals. However, that is not enough, and President Granger continues to lead a National Security Committee in devising strategies that will see immediately, medium-term and long-term changes and a safer Guyana for all Guyanese and visitors. There has already been the implementation of Operation Dragnet and Operation Safeway, the increased training of the Guyana Police Force, boosting of the Criminal Investigations Division, the reintroduction of mounted police, aerial surveillance, and the soon-to-be implemented United Kingdom Security Sector Reform Action Plan. This has resulted in some reduction in crime, with statistics showing reduced crime over consecutive periods when compared to the same time last year. It has also resulted in the solving of cold cases. But while arrests and swift move to prosecute those accused has been emphasized, violent crime continues to be a major problem, especially in the area of robberies, executions, and interpersonal violence, often resulting in deaths. The President said that he is focused on comprehensive crime-fighting strategies that address the root causes of crime to ensure long-term results.
But we have a strategy. Part of the strategy, of course, is to limit the inflow of or the impact of transnational crime by securing our borders and by working with communities through the community policing groups. We therefore have engaged the British government to restore the Security Sector Reform Action Plan. That will help us to retrain the Guyana Police Force. We need to protect our borders better, and we have been doing as best we could with our local resources. For example, the crime of piracy is down. We used to have much more frequent reports about piracy. We need to redeploy the police to Hinterland and Backdam locations, and quite recently we sent mounted policemen into the Backdams and into the Rupununi. And we need to provide the police with sufficient assets, with boats, we need to provide them with aircraft, all-terrain vehicles, to enable them to do their job. So we're working at various levels, one with the international community, two with ensuring that the police force is retrained and re-equipped, and three at the neighborhood level to make sure that the community policing groups and the neighborhood policing groups are equipped to cope with those interpersonal violence.
Among the other changes to be instituted are the tightening of border security and control to prevent the transport of illegal guns and narcotics, more street patrols, increased presence of mounted police in the hinterland and riverine areas of the country, collaboration between the Guyana Police Force and the community policing groups, provision of assets such as drones for border monitoring, aerial surveillance, reduction of cash transactions, and the implementation of a smart city program, which will see cameras being installed along strategic points across the country, and the yearly review of gun license and security reform program. Minister of Public Security, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, said that his ministry has engaged the Department of State of the United States for their assistance in the provision of assets, which can aid in the control of the country's borders.
We have seen an increase of guns coming in through the Brazilian porous borders. And as you would appreciate, that's a massive, massive border for which there aren't plenty controls because of a limited set of resources. And so a number of these weapons are coming in. Some are coming in through the border with Venezuela, we understand, and they're then reaching other mid-Guyana townships like these in Bartica and so on, and then they're being transferred out from there into Georgetown. So it is especially important that we get more resources to ensure that that kind of trafficking in arms is halted. But of course, that's difficult. We recently spoke to the Americans in the State Department. I was there and I pleaded with them that we need strengthening of our border controls. Under the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, they have indicated that yes, they realize the difficulties and there will be some support. As to how much and what it will be, I don't know yet, but I did make the call for things like drones in that border area, aerial surveillance in that border area, especially now realizing that planes are landing and some are being seized because our police force and army got to know of landings there and so on. And of course, more police outposts in those areas.
Additionally, works have begun for the establishment of police outposts in those areas, as well as the introduction of mounted branches in various parts across the country. The government is also exploring the possibility of watchtowers that will feature systems that can detect illegal activities across the border. With the government working on ensuring that the instances of crimes are reduced, a priority is limiting the access to illegal firearms and managing the issuance of gun licenses. The administration will embark on a review of the issuance of gun licenses to private citizens, especially now that information has surfaced that legal guns are also involved in gun-related crimes. Minister Ramjatan, noting that the system for the issuance of firearm licenses during the previous administration was bad, said that the actual enforcement of the laws governing firearms is now being diligently embarked upon. One of these measures will be a yearly review of license holders, which will be conducted by the Commissioner of Police and the Firearm Licensing Board. Commissioner of Police Mr. Silal Prasad supported the minister's point, noting that it is important that licensing is carefully managed, since gun-related crimes are committed with the use of both licensed and unlicensed firearms.
For one reason or another, a person who has access to a firearm can always use that firearm for good purposes or bad purposes. And so it's access, and whether the firearm is legal or illegal, it doesn't matter. It's the person's intention, or if they go berserk, then it's what's going on in the mind right there at the time. So, and firearm is a lethal weapon. That's what it's designed for. It's designed to kill and maim people. And of course, they are the hunting guns, which are designed for animals, but can wear animals as well. So yes, but there are instances also, we have information of security companies that are inherent to business entities are being used for unlawful purposes. Right now we have a murder investigation going on, and one of the lines of inquiry is that a licensed firearm holder have a number of firearms for a security company is renting those guns to persons who are not licensed and who are not authorized to carry them. And one such incident resulted in the death of a person, a murder.
Expanding on what is being done to deal with the number of illegal firearms that has been used in robberies and other violent crimes, he noted that the president has been making major moves to strengthen border security. The police force has been moving to prevent those firearms from coming into the country.
In the gun amnesty, we had 170-something guns turned in. And those were all illegal guns out there. It is true Brazil is a large producer of firearms, And the largest among the two main sources or countries of origin for illegal firearms that we find in Guyana is Brazil, number one, and the US, number two, and they're not far apart. But those are the guns made in Brazil and guns made in the US are the largest amounts that we find, illegal weapons that we find in Guyana. But there is organized crime, and with the movement of cocaine, for example, there are also guns moving for that protection of that cocaine. And similarly, if there's a market for guns here, then there will be a supply that will satisfy that demand. And that is why we need to educate people out of that gun culture. This gun touting culture and culture of violence and so on, we need to change, and we can change that. But one of the best ways or the most effective way of doing that is by educating. And education in school, yes, in the family, yes, in church, yes.
While the government is doing everything possible to play its part, Minister Ramjatan also believes that ordinary citizens also have a role to play in this regard.
What I'm urging out there is that if you are a relative, a mother, a brother, who know that this brother got a firearm, inform the police. We, by our silence, create a lot of violence. Silence is violence. That is why I'm telling the police groups, I am talking to even the National Road Safety Council, citizens everywhere I go, I am begging citizens. You know who are the crime, who got the guns, who just do the wickedness. You can easily write up if you don't want to go to the police station, but you could pass the message on, and we will do it.
Also on the agenda for the government is the increase of street patrols by the Ghana Police Force, as well as the building of partnerships and the strengthening of community policing groups and the neighborhood democratic councils.
The other thing is also to get more patrols on the roads, especially of Georgetown, where these robberies with guns are used all the time. And so it requires more assets, more patrols, more policemen. And right now, my plan is to get some more of the neighborhood policing and the CPG and so on to help the police in this Christmas time to New Year's time, so that we can get the actual policemen, the regular police force, out in the streets, lots more. Thank God we managed to get from the supplier recently a number of motorbikes, ATVs, SUVs, and minibuses as part of the allocation for this year's budget. And so we are going to utilize those assets to do increased patrols in and around the Georgetown area. But it is not exclusively Georgetown. We have to deploy some of these in Berbice. We have to deploy them in West Dem and Essequibo too. And some of the ATVs will have to go up in Lethem area and those other mountainous territories and so on.
The minister also said that the community policing groups must act in a role of social informers and aid in reporting and the arrest of criminal elements in the communities.
The other aspect of it is also very important, is to get the community policing groups as being kind of social informers as to who are the bad guys that might be doing this and springing upon people and creating this sense of fear and lots more robberies with arms or without arms, break and enter and larceny. Because it is the community out there that really know these fellas, and we want them to speak out. And even if they want to give anonymous information, we've asked them, please, if they could send it to the Ministry or the Commissioner of Police.
The ministry has embarked also on a series of programs which targets the at-risk youths with the aim of offering skills training and a livelihood. The Youth at Risk program has commenced, whereby at-risk youths in 20 communities are identified and given specialized skills training. Each of the 20 communities has to have 55 identified at-risk youths to take part in that program. President David Granger, during a recording of the public interest earlier this week, said that while the government is doing everything possible to ensure that there are significant changes in the state of security and safety, there continues to be some rogue elements who have borne witness to the period of the troubles and are not suitable to serve.
The police force was present in those days. Policemen who were witnesses to some of those events are still in the force. You know, we have not purged the police force. So there are still some elements in the force and in society who were involved in those troubles. Now, certain high-profile crimes that we're noticing now seem to be holdovers from that period. And I am very suspicious about the fact that the police are reacting very slowly. And of course, a robbery in the house of the former Minister of Home Affairs cannot go unnoticed. A robbery in the house of a prominent accountant cannot go, the son of a prominent accountant cannot go unnoticed. So I get the impression these crimes are they're crimes. They're almost embarrassed. The police force are embarrassed. The government. We reckon that the action that we've taken to bring the British security sector reform team into Guyana is the correct action, because we cannot proceed in this country with an unreformed Guyana police force. And some of the actions which are taking place convince me that the Guyana police force has to be reformed, and we are going to do just that.
The Minister of Public Security urged the ranks of the disciplined forces too to be good examples and professionals in their duties, as he noted that he is advocating for a better life for them.
Please act professionally, because we want a greater Guyana. We want a safer, secure society and community. And you have to do your work professionally. A lot of the policemen who have been sent to OPR and things like that, a number of them have been found wanting. And oh yes, the salaries and so on are tough, I could understand that, but our economy can't bear bigger increases. We are waiting for probably the oil sector days, and a brighter future will come. But in the meantime, let us be honest exemplars out there performing the work professionally, and so that you don't become rogue cops and get involved. Look, there's a noble tradition in being a policeman. You secure our society. We at the governmental level too have to do our part. We are trying now that we're going to arrange probably house lots for some of them and some other non-pecuniary benefits that are going to help in that process.
Transforming Guyana into a green state that is driven by a workforce that is educated and equipped with the necessary skills that would allow them to compete in the fast-changing, technology-driven global marketplace is one of the main focuses of the David Granger administration. President Granger has said that this goal can only be achieved through a concerted effort by every Guyanese at the neighborhood, community, town, village, municipal, regional, and national levels. The trade unions across the country, too, must play an important role in this drive. In the light of this, the President has called on the Ghana Trades Union Congress, the GTUC, and all union leaders to develop a new model for trade unionism that ensures that workers are equipped for the future. In his address at the GTUC's 4th Triennial Delegates Conference, held at the Crutchfield Labour College on Thursday evening, the President acknowledged the GTUC's long, proud history as the vanguard of the struggle for a good life for workers. But he also noted that it is now imperative that the Congress re-examines its role in keeping with Ghana's pursuit of a green agenda in the constantly changing global economy.
Guyana is to become a green state. And in so doing, could become a workers' paradise. Our concept of the green state rests on 4 pillars. The first is on the provision of educational and environmental services and ecotourism. The second pillar of this green economy is the protection of our biodiversity and our wildlife. The third pillar is the generation of sustainable energy. There are over 100 sites in Guyana which could generate hydroelectric power. And these pillars are capable of generating a new type of worker, a worker in the green economy.
Additionally, the President noted that there is the need for the Congress to focus its attention on the re-education of the workforce to ensure that not only are they able to take advantage of the emerging opportunities as the green economy develops, but they must also be prepared to compete in a knowledge-based and technologically advanced world.
Congress needs to take account of the changes in workers' well-being, not only over the past 75 years, but the changes which are still needed to improve the quality of life of workers. It is true that the struggle of workers over the past 100 years, from the early days of Critchlow, have paid dividends. The working class in Guyana, however, still faces many challenges. We need, my brothers and sisters, a new model of trade unionism to build on the successes of the last 75 years and to prepare workers for the future. And that's why I was happy that the Congress chose the theme about building a green state. Even as we speak, technology is making jobs redundant, leading to the withdrawal and the downsizing of many industries. Outsourcing is adding to job losses. Globalization has led to jobless growth in some instances.
President Granger believes that the unions, in addition to supporting the development of a highly skilled workforce, can play a role in encouraging a new kind of worker, one that sees himself as more than a wage earner, but instead as a job creator, who can contribute to the development of the economy of Guyana.
We are living in a globalized era. Knowledge-based industries are the main drivers of economic growth and competitiveness. If you didn't notice, the hammer and sickle are no longer the tools of the working class. Workers need to be educated. They need to be skilled if they are to function effectively and efficiently in a modern workplace. Workers need to be educated if their upward mobility is to be assured. It is education, and only education, that will provide greater opportunities for the unemployed to secure employment. The provision of educational services for workers and for the unemployed, therefore, must become the central focus of any organization.
The head of state noted that the new model of trade unionism must be aimed at restoring workers' confidence and enhancing capacity building. President Granger said that already serious challenges are being posed for the unionization of workers and the protection of their rights by the diversified, fragmented nature of employment markets.
The GTUC, as an association of trade unions, has to redefine itself in light of these challenges, challenges which confront the entire labor movement in sugar, in bauxite, in the public service. Its attention has to be concentrated on addressing the concerns of the working class, including those who are under and unemployed.
Meanwhile, Mr. Leslie Gonzalez, president of the GTUC, in his remarks, while recognizing the restoration of the collective bargaining process by the government, admitted that indeed the trade unions in Guyana have been facing severe challenges over the past years. They can only be addressed, he said, if they are recognized and confronted.
It is, I believe, entirely appropriate that we in the Guyana Trade Union Congress express our pleasure over the fact that just a few months ago, a framework was created for the restoration of collective bargaining between the Guyana Public Service Union and the government of Guyana. After a number of years during which the facility was denied, this is an important achievement and one which we must hope we can build upon. For the moment, the GTUC would wish to express our considerable optimism that the discourses between the two sides in the matter of wages and salary allowance can continue to a fair and satisfactory conclusion.
The availability of microfinancing institutions in any economy can play a significant role in the growth and development of the country. Support especially for local agricultural initiatives and the expansion of the local economy in communities across Guyana will not only stimulate youth employment, but will ensure that communities and villages can become self-sufficient places. In this regard, President Granger on Monday announced that his government will support viable micro-enterprise projects at the village level, even as it must maintain macroeconomic stability. The president made this announcement in his address at the National Day of Villages observance held at the Lady Sendal Park, Victoria Village, East Coast, Demerara, as he urged the various villages across the country to return to the days of self-sufficiency, especially in the agricultural sector. The head of state said that Guyanese are children of villages and should use this day not only to reflect on the developments of the past, but to chart a new course by ensuring that the great potential for agro-enterprises and self-sufficiency are again at the center of the nation's development. The president said that the government will not shirk its responsibilities, but will ensure that the necessary systems are in place to support and sustain micro-enterprise development.
Your government will support and sustain any reasonable initiative for microenterprise development. We know that we have to pay attention to what the politicians call macroeconomic stability. They're looking at balance of payments. But we are looking at microeconomic stability, household development. Everybody who runs a house knows they can't spend more than they earn. So we have to cut down on buying canned and bottled stuff and use more stuff that is produced right here in Victoria.
Greater Victoria, he said, developed a thriving agro-processing economy. It produced coconuts from which it manufactured oil, used its byproducts to make pig and poultry feed, and coir, or coconut fiber, the natural fiber extracted from the husk of the coconut to make mattresses. It also produced cassava, which was processed into cassava bread and casserie, and fruit for beverages, table consumption, and preserves. This must once again become the norm for the village, the president said.
Victoria produced everything people needed to eat. It did it before, and it has to do it again. Yes. Practically every household had a kitchen garden where it grew some pepper and some green vegetables. And when our forefathers laid out these villages, every proprietor had 2 bits of land, at least one in the front for the home and one in the back for the farm. And what you couldn't grow in front, you had a plot of land at the back dam. And there you produce your ground provisions, your plantains, and your pumpkins, and your yams, and your sweet potatoes, and your dasheen, and your edo. And every weekend, these bateaux will come out full of produce, and some of it will be exported to the Caribbean. Victoria was a hub of micro business.
The freed slaves and indentured immigrants who established villages were pioneers, he said. Even though they were considered illiterate and poor, they developed systems which not only worked for them, but also paved the way for successful village economies. Meanwhile, the president said that as Guyanese celebrate National Day of Villages, it is a reaffirmation of the government's confidence in the centrality of villages to the future of the nation, which should enjoin every Guyanese with the responsibility to revitalize all of the villages for posterity.
Northbrook is like the incubation of the nation. It's like if our nation was born when Northbrook was purchased. And that is why I call Victoria the mother of all villages. It is the first village to be bought on the coastland, and it's a landmark. It's a monument to human freedom, which our forefathers fought for. Although the other villages were purchased and they received their titles, it is what happened right here in Victoria that created what I call the village movement. The others occurred, yes, but the real movement started here. And this is the movement that we see on these stamps. People actually walking off of the plantations.
Further, the head of state noted that National Day of Villages is about the future. Meanwhile, Minister of Communities, Mr. Ronald Bulkin, remarked that such a day is a proud one for the villages across the country, particularly Victoria, as it celebrates the sacrifices and offers reflection on the work which has been done by the ancestors of the land.
Today we are in the proud village of Victoria to celebrate the annual National Day of Villages. It is not by accident that this commemoration is being held here in Victoria, but out of recognition and respect for Victoria being the first village to be established in our country some 177 years ago. That historic and momentous purchase on 7th November 1839 of the plantation that was subsequently named Victoria paved the way for the local government system, in which villages were administered by the purchasers themselves, persons who made the rules, persons who regulated their own lives.
Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Ghana Post Office Corporation, Pastor Raphael Messiah, minutes after unveiling 2 stamps titled The Exodus and The Purchase to mark the National Day of Villages, remarked on the tradition of self-sufficiency and cooperation that defined their early efforts to develop a thriving village economy. In addition, Mr. Brian Smith, a resident of the village, in an invited comment said that he was pleased that after so many years, the village and its contributions to the country were being celebrated. Victoria, he added, has made significant contributions in the field of agriculture, and it is his wish, like the President, that Victoria can rise again to reclaim that fame.
It's an amazing and a very historical event. Victoria moved from far away, you know. I'm born and bred Victorian, and I'm proud to say that I'm happy to be part of the celebrations today, being the first village to be bought by our forefathers. It's quite an amazing history, and it's good to know that you know, the media and the president and the leadership of this country can acknowledge villages.
The Republic of South Africa and the State of Palestine earlier this week had their non-resident ambassadors to Guyana accredited by President David Granger. Immediately after presenting her letters of credence to the President, the South African High Commissioner to Guyana visited and placed a wreath at the African Liberation Movement monument at the Humaniana. in a show of appreciation for Guyana's support for the struggle against apartheid in that country. The Liberation Monument was constructed by the government of Guyana and is dedicated to the freedom fighters of Southern Africa. The two countries established diplomatic ties on November 4, 1994, and President Granger highlighted Guyana's advocacy and role in the dismantling of apartheid in South Africa, for which the African National Congress and the government of the Republic of South Africa conferred the Order of the Companions of O.R. Tambo Award to the late President Burnham. However, this award was never officially handed over to the family of the late president.
Guyana, a small state in South America, played a big role in the struggle to dismantle apartheid, to liberate Southern Africa, and to ensure majority rule in the Republic of South Africa. Guyana employed every available international forum, including the Caribbean Community, the Commonwealth, the online movement, and the United Nations to agitate for an end to apartheid in South Africa. Guyana sponsored and co-sponsored resolutions at the United Nations which condemned the racist system and which called attention to acts of brutality committed against opponents of this system. Guyana welcomed Oliver Reginald Tambo right here in Georgetown. In July 1987, Guyana celebrated Nelson Mandela's release from prison. Guyana exulted in the introduction of majority rule in the Republic of South Africa. These events and achievements vindicated the solidarity between our peoples.
Accepting the letters of credence first from the High Commission of South Africa to Guyana, President Granger said that Guyana looks forward to cooperating with the Republic of South Africa in the area of climate change and environmental management as part of the country's continued push toward the development of a green state.
Guyana is pursuing a path to become a green state. We look forward to sharing our experiences on the mitigation of the impact of global warming, the demarcation of national parks, the designation of protected areas, the generation of energy from renewable sources, and the protection of wildlife with the Republic of South Africa.
The High Commissioner in her comments stated that it is an honor to be chosen by her country to be the representative to Guyana and this part of the world, and that she hopes to make a difference in the advancement of the bilateral interests of the two countries.
Your Excellency, as you well know, people-to-people relations are an integral part of state and government relations. Hence, it is imperative that we find ways to boost tourism, that is travel, because that is usually a catalyst to improving linkages between people, between businesses, between institutions. Working together, we hope we can change that so that our bilateral contact can improve.
Meanwhile, newly accredited non-resident ambassador of the State of Palestine to Guyana, Dr. Linda Sobe Ali, who also presented her letters of credence, expressed her government's gratitude and appreciation to the government and the people of Guyana for the country's recognition and support for the rights of the Palestinian people, as she presented her letters of credence to President David Granger. Dr. Sobe Ali, following the brief ceremony, said that the event is a historical moment and can be attributed to the promising advancement of bilateral relations between the two countries. She noted that it is a clear proof that Guyana has always been an ardent supporter of Palestinian rights, and for that the people of that country will forever be grateful.
I stand before you today, Your Excellency, on behalf of the Palestinian people, who, in fullness of their pain, pride, and anticipation for peace and freedom, thank you and your country for your historical and firm solidarity with us and our legitimate cause and aspiration to achieving our statehood. This courageous stance of your part was particularly highlighted through the country's official recognition of our state of Palestine January 14th of 2011. This recognition implies your solidarity with our people, who have been striving for a long overdue freedom.
Meanwhile, President Granger in his remarks said that Guyana historically supported the struggle of the Palestinian people for self-determination and for a homeland. The Palestinian people's right to an independent and sovereign homeland must form the basis for genuine and enduring peace, he noted.
Guyana will continue to support efforts to remove all obstacles to self-determination and human development of the people of the state of Palestine. Guyana upholds the right of all peoples to promote their development free from the threat of force and aggression. We abhor interference in internal affairs of other states. We promote friendly relations among all nations based on mutual respect, mutual cooperation for mutual benefit. We denounce the use of force to settle international disputes. Guyana welcomes your accreditation as an opportunity to strengthen bilateral cooperation between our two countries.
Now we take a look at the President's diary. President David Granger on Saturday evening attended an evening of love, lights and music, which was hosted by Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu and his wife, Ms. Rasita Nagamutu, at his official residence. The event, organized in observance of the Hindu Festival of Lights, Diwali, featured cultural performances. It was also attended by Vice President and Minister of Public Security, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan and Ms. Rasita Ramjatan, Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Carl Greenwich, Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Barton Scotland, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and other members of the government. On Monday evening, Reverend Dr. Colin Cowan, General Secretary of the Council for World Mission, paid a courtesy call on President David Granger at the Ministry of the Presidency. During the meeting, several areas including the green economy, climate change, the management of the environment, human trafficking, youth employment and participation in national matters, and the role of the church in the development of a society and nation were discussed. Mistress Sandra Granger never imagined herself as First Lady of Guyana. She likes a quiet life away from the limelight, but since becoming the First Lady of the land, she has wasted no time in using her office, resources and voice to encourage, support and motivate the young children, teenage mothers, the elderly and all other vulnerable groups across the country to aim for greater heights. From her advocacy for access to education to her self-reliance workshops aimed at making women entrepreneurs, the First Lady has become a champion for their rights, and through her office and many collaborations, many are now living better quality lives. Young people have not been left out of the First Lady's programs and advocacy, and on Wednesday she again used her voice to call for the empowerment of teenage mothers, who she said must be given the tools to succeed.
They too must be empowered and given the tools to succeed. They too must be given the opportunity to, quote, become agents of positive change in their communities.
Addressing invitees at the launch of the 2016 State of the World Population Report earlier this week at the Guyana, the First Lady said that while speaking on the importance of investing in the reintegration of young mothers into society to allow them to become productive adults, teenage pregnancy impacts the health, education, social development and economic development of adolescent girls.
It is a matter of greater concern that Guyana has the highest rate of teenage pregnancy in the Commonwealth Caribbean.
She also noted that young girls are also at risk of cervical cancer, which is the second leading cause of cancer-related death in Guyana, along with other sexually transmitted infections and diseases.
The data indicate that young girls, mainly those with multiple sexual partners, are being diagnosed with cervical cancer, which is the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths in Guyana. After experiencing a decline in HIV and AIDS and moving to a zero rate of mother-to-child transmission of HIV in CARICOM, a 9% increase in HIV/AIDS has been recorded, with the majority of new cases reported being among young girls. This will likely have an impact on our records relating not only to the number of HIV cases reported, but also to mother-to-child transmission.
Additionally, she noted that ways must be found to encourage teenage mothers to return to school to complete their education.
Novel ways must be found to encourage our teenage mothers to return to school without prejudice to complete their education. They can write their CXC examinations or receive training in a vocation if that is their wish. It does not matter whether they choose to acquire knowledge in traditional or non-traditional fields. It matters that they are choosing to develop and lead productive lives. The Minister of Education earlier this year stated that teen mothers would be allowed to return to school. Our education officials will need to consciously set aside their moral judgment and prejudice and accept those girls in their classes without ridicule or fear of contamination of other students.
With that, we have come to the end of this week's edition of This Week with the President. Thank you for joining me. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website at www.motp.gov.gy, like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. Do have a safe and productive rest of the week, Guyana. Goodbye.